All right, so here we're going to go over the beginning of Unit 3 with Chapter 11. You can open up your book. We're on page 68 if you want to follow along in your book. All right, so our first word is adept. People enjoy visiting my parents, who are adept at making guests feel welcome and at home. Justin is an adept liar. He always looks so innocent and sincere that everyone believes his lies. That's not true, at least not about me. Um, and then on our picture we have an adept rock climber. So adept means skillful, but it just doesn't mean that someone's kind of good. It means that they're highly skilled or that they're an expert at something. So in the first example, when people visit my parents are adept, are really, really good at making people feel at home. In the second example, Justin, who's not me, is really, really good at making people believe him when he's lying. So adept means like highly skillful or really good at something. Okay, so our next one is encompass. Our history teacher's broad knowledge of the subject encompasses details of life in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Tomorrow's test will be difficult because it encompasses all the material covered this semester. And in the picture it says the valley that encompasses a small village. And what encompass means is to include. So on page 69, it has encompass is number 8. And it just says to include or contain. But encompass really means that it does mean that it includes, but it has a sense of including a broad group of thing, uh, a, a, a broad group of things or items or subjects. So for example, the college ESL program encompasses reading, writing, speaking, and listening as well. So it's this idea of holding within it a variety of things, a variety of different things. Okay, our next word here is entrepreneur. Glenville has no shopping center, but the city is growing quickly, so quickly that smart entrepreneurs are sure to start up new businesses there soon. My 10-year-old neighbor is already an entrepreneur. He set up a lemonade stand last summer and sold homemade cookies at Halloween. And an entrepreneur is a business investor. On page 69, it's number 1, and it says a person who organizes, manages, and takes the risk of a business undertaking. So an entrepreneur, in this case, like a small business owner, would be an entrepreneur. A business investor is not necessarily, like some huge company that's investing in someone, but we often use the word entrepreneur for an individual or individuals who are taking a risk themselves to start a business. And it's often the idea is that they are in part they're in control of the organizing, the managing, and all of the risk of the business. All right. Our next word is eradicate. In recent years, smallpox has been eradicated, the first time in history that humans have been able to wipe out a disease. What makes so many people feel that they must eradicate all signs of aging? Why should we get rid of our wrinkles and gray hair? And to eradicate means to erase. But really, eradicate has the meaning of completely erasing. So in the first case, we have smallpox. This is a disease that no longer exists. It has been completely erased. In the second example, people are trying to completely erase the signs of aging, right? So people want to get rid of anything that makes them look the age that they are. In the book, it's on page 69, it's number 5, and it says to get rid of altogether, to wipe out. So erase can be used, like you use the eraser on your pencil to erase your writing, but we're not going to say we eradicate your writing. Um, because eradicate means that it no longer exists. So if we eradicate your writing, it means there's no writing anywhere, and won't be any writing anymore after that. Okay? Homogeneous. The student body at the local college appears quite homogeneous, but there are significant social and economic differences among the students. Homogenized milk has been made homogeneous. This means that it's treated so it will be of a uniform consistency rather than having cream rise to the top. And homogeneous means the same throughout. Now, the prefix homo or homo, you may have heard it in words like homosexual, um, and what that means is the same. Genius is related to genes, which doesn't really help us in this case. But basically, homogeneous means that everything in the group is the same or similar. Um, uh, on page 69 it says made up of similar or identical parts, unvarying throughout. So homogeneous has this meaning of everybody is the same. By itself it's not a negative term. Sometimes it may be used as a negative term, like in the first, well, if you were to describe a classroom as homogeneous, it would sort of mean that everybody is the same as everybody else, and that's sort of a negative. But by itself, the word itself is neither negative nor positive. It just depends on what you think of that kind of situation. Our next word here is presumptuous. It was presumptuous of Eric to announce his engagement to Phyllis before she had actually agreed to marry him. If you ask personal questions at a job, you'll be considered presumptuous. So, for example, don't ask the interviewer, "What are they paying you?" Presumptuous means too forward. And on page 69, it also has too bold or overly confident. Presumptuous comes from the word presume, and to presume, pre means before, so presume means that you're guessing at something before you actually have all of the facts. So if you're presumptuous, what you're doing is you're assuming that one thing is going to happen or that some situation is going to be okay without actually having the knowledge that it will be okay. So for example, in the first one, Eric is presumptuous because he's assuming that Phyllis is going to say yes to marrying him, but he doesn't know that for sure. In the second case, it's presumptuous to ask something like, "What are they paying you?" Because what you're presuming is that the person is willing to give you that answer. So to be presumptuous is considered to be a negative thing because it it makes you seem like you think that whatever you want or whatever you think should be is the right answer without waiting to hear what the other person actually feels or thinks or says. Next word is sorted. Supermarket tabloids sell well because many people want to know sordid details of celebrities' addictions and messy divorces. The reformed criminal now lectured at high schools on how to avoid the mistakes that led him into a sordid life as a drug dealer. And in this case, sordid means ugly. Now, sordid doesn't mean ugly as in the opposite of beautiful. Sordid means ugly in the sense of sort of indecent, morally low, or corrupt. And that's number 10 on page 69. So it's ugly in the sense of things. We have an expression in English about we don't air our dirty laundry, and what we mean by that is that we don't tell everybody all of the sort of secret things that that are going in our in our lives that are not pleasant. So, for example, if I'm not, but if I'm fighting with my wife, I'm not going to share that information with well, with you guys, with my class, or with people I don't know, because those are sordid details. Those are personal details that are really not good for other people to know, or not proper for other people to talk about. So in the first case, we talk about the information that we get about celebrities. There's things that people will want to know about celebrities that you would never want anyone else to know about you. So if you were addicted to some drug, or you had just gone through a divorce, you'd never want someone else to know that, or tons of other people to know that. But we love to hear, not all of us, love to hear about celebrities' addictions and divorces. Similarly, someone who is a former drug deal might be embarrassed by the things that they had done. And so to talk about those details of those negative things that they've done, we would describe those as sort of sordid, because they're not what we would say dinner table conversation. Okay, next one, standardize. When the company standardized its pay scale, the salary for each type of job became identical throughout all the departments. If Jamila begins selling her homemade soup, she'll have to standardize the ingredients. Now she just puts in whatever she has on hand, so the soup is never the same from one day to the next. So standardize means to make the same. So if we think about it, we had this word earlier, homogeneous. And there's actually a verb form of homogeneous, which means to homogenize. And to homogenize is similar to standardize, in that homogenize means to make everything, make all parts of something consistent, or the same. So the example for the milk, we said that that we homogenize milk, meaning we make it homogeneous. We make it so that it's all the same, so that you don't have the cream floating to the top and then the skim milk down at the bottom. But standardize means to make some item, or some system, or in this case some pay scale or some test, standard, so that it's the same for everybody who takes it, or tastes it, or uses it. One of the tests that that most high school students take to get into college is called the SAT, and I forget what the A stands for. I guess it's probably academic, but the S is standardized, and the T is for test. But we say that this is a standardized test because it's basically the same test that everyone will take, regardless of whether you live in the U.S. or you don't live in the U.S., if you're in the North, in the South. It's standardized for everybody. It's a test that's the same for everybody else. On page 69, it's number 7, to make consistent, cause to conform to a model. So this is important too, is that it conforms to some model or some standard. So we say this is the way that things should be, and so we make everything else similar to that one standard, or that one model. Stint. My stint serving hamburgers and French fries at a fast food restaurant convinced me that I needed to get a college degree. After traveling during her stint in the Navy, Elise wanted a job that would let her continue to see the world. And what a stint is a length of time. It's number 3 on page 69. It says a specific period of work or service, an amount of time spent. So what we're talking about with a stint most often is we're talking about a period of time that we spend working somewhere or serving some cause. So in the first example, it's a job, the amount of time or the length of time that the person spent working at the fast food restaurant. Um, the second one is the amount of time the woman spent in the Navy. So stint has a stint can be long or it can be short, but when you're talking about a stint, normally what you're saying is that that's some set length of time that began and ended. Um, you wouldn't talk about a stint as being something that's ongoing, because stint has that meaning of some period of time, which means that there's a beginning and there was an end to it. All right, and so then our last one here is strident. Miss Jasper has the most strident standards in the English department. Passing her course is difficult. Getting an A is next to impossible. Elected officials should be held to a stringent code of ethics, requiring them to avoid even the appearance of wrongdoing. Strident means demanding. Um, oh, I'm sorry, it's not strident, it's stringent. Strident and stringent have similar meanings, but let's focus here on stringent. Stringent means strictly controlled or enforced, strict or severe. Stringent has this meaning of that when you're describing some standards or some rules that are very hard to meet those standards, or difficult to follow those rules, or require a lot of effort to do those things. So don't get confused here. We wouldn't necessarily describe the teacher as stringent, although I suppose we could, but we would describe a teacher as strict. But the thing that is stringent is actually the rules, because it's the rules that are controlled, it's the rules that are enforced, it's the rules that are severe, rather than necessarily the person. You could describe someone as stringent, but really what you mean is that they enforce some stringent policy, that they enforce some stringent rules. Okay, so let's take a look at the sentence check. This is on page 70. So it's blank of Amy to assume she got the job when the others are still being interviewed. So it's something, so she shouldn't think that she's already got the job, because there's still other people who are interviewing for the job. It takes years of study and practice to become something at acupuncture. So it takes a long time in order to become something at acupuncture, which is a kind of medicine. Okay? So the first one is presumptuous. So Amy shouldn't be assuming that she already got the job before everybody's done interviewing. She really shouldn't assume until she gets the call that she got the job. In the second one, it takes a long time to become skilled at doing acupuncture. It takes a long time to do that. In the novel Oliver Twist, innocent young Oliver falls into the hands of a gang of pickpockets who teach him their blank trade. So pickpockets are people who steal, who steal out of people's pockets, steal their money, steal their wallets, steal their watches. So this is not a very good life, or this is not a very positive or moral activity. My grandfather held many jobs during his lifetime. He even did a blank as a circus performer. So for some time of his life, at some point in his life, he worked for some period of time as a circus performer. Joyce and Stephen's adopted son was abused in an earlier home. They're working hard to blank the lingering effects on him of that experience. So the son had a very bad experience before he was adopted into this new home, and his current parents are working hard to do something to help him deal with those the effects of the abuse. So the first one is sordid. As we said, pickpockets are thieves, and this is a morally low activity. The second one is stint, or the fourth one is stint, meaning that for some specific period of time, a period of work, he was a circus performer. And the last one is eradicate. They want to completely get rid of all of these bad effects that the son had from his previous home. The town is so close-knit and blank that newcomers feel out of place. Many of the residents are even related to each other. So this is a town where many of the people who live there are close-knit, meaning that they have very close relationships with one each other. And in addition to that, a lot of them are even in the same family. The articles in our small newspaper blank local and statewide news, but not national or international events. So the articles in the newspaper, they're about the local and the statewide news. They're not about the national or international news, but they do include the local and the statewide news. So the first one is homogeneous, right? Newcomers feel out of place because the residents must be similar, are similar throughout. And the second one is encompass, meaning that it covers, the newspaper articles cover local and statewide news. I know that one might be a little bit confusing because I was saying encompass needs to cover a broad range of things, and this makes it a little bit confusing because it's excluding some certain things. But it does encompass both the local and the statewide news. Okay, and then so our last one here. My sister applied to several colleges, some with very high admission standards for their students and others with less blank requirements. So in some of the colleges had very high standards. Their standards were very high. It was very difficult to get into. But others were less difficult to get into. Ramon has just opened an auto repair shop. Now he's a blank. He can join the National Association of the Self-Employed. So he works for himself and he runs his own business. He runs and manages and organizes his own business. So he is a what? Should the high school curriculum be blanked throughout the state, or should each school district be free to design its own courses? So the curriculum means the program of study in the high school, meaning the classes that students are required to take. So should it be the same throughout the state, or should each school district be able to pick and choose its own courses? So our first one is stringent, meaning that these are very high standards, and in other places they're less high or less strictly controlled. And the second one, Ramon is an entrepreneur because he's in charge. He organizes and takes a risk for his business. And the last one, it's standardized, meaning that the curriculum, should the curriculum be made the same or consistent throughout the state. Okay, great. So again, if you have any questions, write those down. Take some time to answer the vocabulary questions, and we'll go over those in class. All right, take care. Bye.